So nowadays, most people have some type of network access on their phones, whether it be the mobile data network or even just over Wi-Fi. So there's a good chance that you're going to be building an application that's going to need to connect to the internet in some fashion. And what we're going to do here is to build a simple application where the user can type in a URL and then it will go out to the web and retrieve that web page and display the HTML, which is essentially like a view source application. One of the things immediately that you have to do if you're going to be connecting to the internet is you need to add the permission for it in the manifest file. So I'm going to go into the manifest file, go to permissions, and then I'm going to add a uses permissions tag. And now what we're going to do is to scroll down, and the permission is android.permission.internet. This application is going to be connecting out to the internet. Okay, so with that permission set, we can get started. So I'm going to go into my main layout file, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this text view. We're not going to need it. And at the top, I'm going to add an edit text field. And this is where the user is going to be able to type in the URL. Below that, I'm going to add a button which the user will click on in order to start retrieving it. And then I'm going to put a text view down here, which is actually going to display our HTML. And I'm going to make this span the entire container here. Let's just set this up a little bit. So if I come down, one of the things I want to do here is to add some padding. So let's say 15 dp for padding. And let's give it a background of white. And then lastly, let's change the text color to black. And we'll make a little bit more code-like. Let's change the font of this typeface to monospace, so it looks more like a legitimate source reader. So then I'm going to go to my button, and let's just change the label on that button. So we'll change the text property to get source. And now for my edit text, let's just remove the text that's actually in there right now. So this is what the user is going to see. Again, they're going to come through and they're going to type in the URL, click get source, and then it's going to download that. And let's actually just get rid of this text too to keep it consistent. Okay, so now let's move over to our Java code. So the one thing we need to do is we need to get references to those three UI components that we created. So now these are going to have the final modifier on them because we're going to be referencing them inside of an inner event handler. So let's start with the edit text first. I'll call this ET. It's equal to find view by ID. There's my edit text. And again, we have to add that cast. And the next one we'll do is the button. We'll call it B. There's my button. And now the last one is the text view, where we're actually going to display the source. I'll just call it TV. Now we have references to these. Now we can actually start to set up the logic. So let's first respond to, and we'll set the on-click listener for our button, which is going to start this whole thing going. We're just going to do it as an anonymous inner type. Okay, so inside of here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a try-catch, because there's obviously a lot of things can go wrong when we're connecting out to the internet. So we definitely want to have a try-catch block that's going to catch any errors that we have. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll come down here. Define our exception. like that. And we're not going to do anything here in the catch statement, but again, it's a good idea to wrap everything here in a try catch because there are definitely some things that could go wrong. So what we want to do is to create a new instance of the URL class because we're going to be building up a URL here. So let's do that. So we have the URL, which is in the java.net package. I'll just call it URL. And for right now, we're just going to put it equal to null. And let's go ahead and now create the URL object. So we're going to do that by reading the text out of the edit text field and passing it in to the constructor. Is equal to new URL. Now to get the text out of the edit text field, we're going to use the getText method. And like I've mentioned previously, this returns an editable object. If we want the raw string, we need to go to toString, which will get us that. Now we have our URL set up. Now to actually go out and connect to the internet, we need a URL connection instance. So let's create that next. So URL connection, and I'll call it con is equal to URL dot open connection. And that's going to return our URL connection instance. So again, we're opening up a connection to that URL and storing it here. So now when we get this information back, we're obviously going to need to read in the data that comes back. And to do that, we're going to use a buffered reader. So let me create an instance of buffered reader. And I'll call it reader here. Is equal to new buffered reader. And to this, we actually need to pass in the input stream reader, which contains the stream of the information that we downloaded. So I'm going to create a new instance of input stream reader. Now to this constructor, we need to get the input stream from our connection. So to do that, we say con.getInputStream. Okay, like that. So again, here we're creating a buffered reader, and we're getting the input stream from that connection that we made out to the internet, passing it into an input stream reader, and then handing that to the buffered reader. So after that chain of handoffs, now we're ready to actually start reading in the data that came back. So first I'm going to create a string property here, and I'm just going to call it line, because this is going to contain each line of data that's in the file. So we're going to iterate over it line by line. So I'm just going to make an empty string here. And now we're going to loop through and get all of the text that's out of that stream. So I'm going to say while line is equal to reader.readLine. Now we want to be able to test for the end of the file. So what we want to do is to wrap this in parentheses and check to see whether this is returning null. If it's returning null, then we basically want to stop. So we're going to say is not equal to null. So basically saying as long as we're not at the end of the file, let's go ahead and read this in. So now as we're doing this, we go line by line, but we now want to basically append it to this text view, and we want to display it to the user. So to do that, I'm going to say TV and then append. Now we can pass in that line string value, and this will actually then add it to the text view. And that's all we have to do here. So again, we're coming in the onClick listener, creating a URL instance based off of the string that's in the edit text, creating a URL connection so that we can connect out and retrieve the information, creating a buffered reader because that's the easiest way to read the information that comes back. And we're basically taking this input stream that comes back to us, passing it to the buffered reader, and then just going line by line and saying, take this line that came back from the file, put it into that text view. And that's all there is to it. So let's go ahead and run this, launch up the emulator. And all we'll have to do is to put in a URL inside of here. So we'll do HTTP. And let's just do google.com and then click get source. And you can see now it's actually gone out to the internet, downloaded that HTML file, and actually populated it here inside of this text view. So that's basic network access, again, being able to connect to the internet to a file, and this could be an XML file, it could be, any type of information that you want to retrieve from the internet. The simplest possible way, again, is to use the URL connection in conjunction with a buffered reader to get that data.